You know, we are the greatest nation on earth. We've got the most powerful military. We've got the biggest economy. We've got all kinds of things going for us, and the world watches us. They look at us very, very closely. They would like to be able to copy us, and they used to. But are they going to copy the mess that's this campaign? As these candidates are out slinging mud at each other, they're insulting one another, and you think, could it get any nastier?
Well, the Democrats have been saying for months that the Republicans are the people that have the issue. Their campaign has been civil compared to the bitter fighting on the other side. But now, the gloves are also coming off between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. Charlene Aaron has the story.
As the verbal battles get more and more heated in both parties, Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are clashing over this comment from Sanders, questioning whether or not she's ready to be president.
I don't believe that she is qualified.
Well, it's kind of a silly thing to say.
The controversy began late Wednesday when Sanders discussed Clinton's suitability for the White House and isn't letting up. But that hasn't been the only clash on the Democratic side of the campaign trail. While stumping for his wife in Philadelphia, former President Bill Clinton's speech was repeatedly interrupted by protesters from Black Lives Matter. For nearly 15 minutes, Clinton exchanged words with protesters who objected to the 1994 criminal justice reform bill he signed into law that increased prison sentences for gang-related offenses. He defended his wife's use of the phrase super predators in a 1996 speech.
Oh, I don't know how you would characterize the gang leaders who got 13-year-old kids hopped up on crack and sent them out onto the street to murder other African-American children.
On the Republican side, Donald Trump is calling his rival Ted Cruz Lion Ted and making sure his fellow New Yorkers don't forget Cruz's remark about New York values in a GOP debate a few months ago.
Do you remember during the debate when he started lecturing me on New York values like we're no good?
While making the rounds across New York, Cruz defended his comments.
People of New York know exactly what those values are. They're the values of liberal Democratic politicians like Andrew Cuomo, like Anthony Weiner, like Eliot Spitzer, like Charlie Rangel, all of whom Donald Trump has supported.
Meanwhile, a new Associated Press GFK poll shows 7 in 10 Americans, including many Republican voters, have a negative view of Donald Trump. Ted Cruz hopes his recent primary wins give him the momentum ahead of the next big vote on April 19th in New York. But Trump is expected to win there in his home state. And among the Democrats, Sanders is hoping to gain enough votes in New York and beyond to shoot for a contested convention on the Democratic side. Whatever happens, it looks like neither side is going to let up in its nasty attacks in the brutal presidential primaries of 2016. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, I tell you, they're out killing themselves off, and the negatives are coming out on all of them. You know, the American people, they want harmony. They want this country to go forward. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got to stop this liberal versus conservative. We've got to stop this Democrat versus Republican, black versus white, rich versus poor, all that stuff. We cannot be dividing one another. We have to unify, because the greatest thing facing this nation is the risk of bankruptcy. And I said it, and it's true. We're overspending. The federal government is budget is out of control. And you and your children and your grandchildren are going to have to pay the price when this country goes tumbling into the drink. And I was talking to our producer earlier today, and the thought is once they begin to put interest rates back where they normally should be, which is the 3-4% range on government bonds, there won't be any money left for anything except paying off the debt. It's a huge issue, and none of the politicians are talking about it, but we've got to consider it. And all this other stuff is a sideshow. Well, one of the biggest issues in this election year, of course, is the Supreme Court. And President Obama is once again to try to get the Republican Senate to hold a hearing on his nominee. And Ephraim Graham says the Republicans ain't buying it.
Indeed, President Obama is making a stronger push for Merrick Garland, speaking at the University of Chicago Law School, where he had taught for years. The president says Garland deserves a hearing.
He is as good of a judge as we have in this country right now. Why is it so hard for the guy just to get a hearing and a vote?
Republicans are standing firm in their decision not to hold a hearing or vote on Garland. They have pointed to statements by several top Democrats over the last quarter of a century, saying that a Supreme Court nominee should not be voted on in an election year, including Vice President Joe Biden when he was in the Senate. Democrats have been increasing their pressure on Senate Republicans, and they say the GOP will cave eventually. But Republicans say that is simply wishful thinking. And here's a story about the power of judges. A federal judge has ruled that Los Angeles County's decision to put a cross on its county seal for the first time in a decade was unconstitutional. The original 1957 seal included a cross, but it was removed in 2004 when the seal was redesigned after a threat of legal action by the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California. A decade later, the cross was added again to be historically accurate. The judge ruled adding the cross, quote, places the county's power, prestige, and purse behind a single religion, Christianity, and that is a violation of the Constitution. The county seal is used on buildings, vehicles, and publications. Pat?
I wonder when they're going to go after the name. Los Angeles means the angels, you know? Oh, that represents some religion, doesn't it? I believe that's Christianity or Judaism. It represents somebody that believes in angels, Los Angeles. And then you've got all the other, you know, Cruz, you know, Santa Cruz, for example. Is the ACLU going to change the names? You know, the Virginia Beach has got a steel. We've got a lighthouse and a cross. Well, that's what happened when the cross was planted in the shores of Virginia Beach. That was the beginning of this nation. So you can say, well, it represents a religious group, but the people who founded America were Christians. And those judges, I'm sick of judges and the stuff they're doing, where they come from. And it just shows how liberal these law schools are, and the legal faculty are. Well, some surveys have been taken that show that it's just a minuscule number of law school faculty who are really strong conservatives and strong Christians. John?
Pat, a number of politicians, corporations, and celebrities are blasting the states of Mississippi and North Carolina for what they call discrimination laws. Mississippi's religious freedom law protects churches and wedding vendors from being forced to participate in gay weddings. North Carolina's law says government bathrooms should be separated primarily by biological sex. In both states, LGBT activists and corporations are fighting back, hoping to reverse the laws. But a religious liberty expert, Dr. Ryan Anderson, tells CBN News he's still optimistic about the future of religious freedom in the United States.
The reason that big business and kind of the elite sectors of the media have to team up to get the governors to veto them is that the people and their elected representatives are in favor of these bills. So it's very possible for good legislation, good public policy to be passed, and it's what we have to work towards. We have to be encouraging and supporting and defending good public policy.
The Department of Homeland Security is changing the wording on its naturalization tests for new citizens to more accurately describe religious freedoms enjoyed by Americans. The change comes 1 year after Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford requested it. Instead of freedom of worship, Immigration Services will now use freedom of religion to describe the religious rights of Americans. Lankford says it's an important distinction.
We as Americans don't have freedom of worship. Other nations have that. We have the free exercise of religion. That means you can live your faith anywhere you want to live your faith, in any place, publicly, privately. And so for new citizens coming in for a long time that have heard that our nation has just freedom of worship, they're now actually going to get the correct information out. That is a new citizen of this great nation. We do also have something you didn't have in the past for many of them. That's the free exercise of your religion.
The change will mean 40 related U.S. citizenship publications will now be updated. The ACLU of Indiana is formally challenging the state's new abortion law on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky. The new law forbids abortion on the basis of race, sex, or potential disability of a fetus. Doctors who perform a forbidden abortion could be sued for wrongful death. Pro-life Governor Mike Pence says it provides protection for the unborn.
I believe this legislation was comprehensive pro-life legislation that ensured that expectant mothers had additional information about their unborn child. It provided additional protections for the unborn and for the dignified treatment of the final remains of the unborn.
Indiana is the second state to pass such a law. Washington is spending so much that in a few years, the national debt will be more than the entire economy produces in a year. That was the word from the Comptroller General of the Government Accountability Office to the Senate this week. The Washington Free Beacon reports he added another warning that if cost controls for Medicare don't hold and that if health care costs keep going up, then the national debt could hit 200 to 300% of the total U.S. economy. And that would be far more debt than the country could handle. Pat?
I don't think people have any conception of what's going to happen if this country suddenly goes bankrupt. I mean, we're talking about serious problems. You won't have any police services. You won't have any ambulance services. You won't have any fire protection. The place will devolve into chaos. There won't be enough food on the shelves. I mean, the whole thing will break down because there's not enough money. Our money will be worthless, and if we start printing, then it'll be like Germany right after the First World War when that hyperinflation hit. It was just outrageous what happened. We can't have that in America, but nobody of these people who are running for office is really addressing the problem of what we're dealing with. We have promised everybody stuff. Everybody wants stuff, and they want it from the federal government. Everybody wants his or her piece of the action. And when you say, let's control the budget, everybody says, of course let's control the budget, but not where my goodies come in. You leave my goodies alone. Whatever that benefit is that I get, whether I'm elderly or whether I'm sick or whether I'm unemployed or whatever it is, I want what's mine. We don't have enough money to afford to pay everybody all the things they want. Only God has unlimited resources, and we've sure made him mad. So I just think, ladies and gentlemen, sooner or later we've got to wake up, and then if we're looking for a president, we need a president who can get this monster under control. And it's a massive job, massive. This huge thing, and we've got to take a meat axe to that federal budget and start chopping, and it might be very painful for people who lose their subsidies. They lose their little piece of the action. But we as a nation have got to come to the point where we say the survival of this country is more important than my particular piece of the pie. Are we going to do that? Probably not.